Babblefish 5 here. I've had a lot of requests from people to actually do more breakfast recipes, and unfortunately I just don't have a lot of those. So today I'm going to give you one of my favorite recipes, and we'll also talk about how to do some of your own oatmeal recipes on the trail on this episode of the Hungry Hammock Hanger. Our first recipe today is going to be hash browns and peppers. This is a great breakfast. It also serves as a base to add a few other things onto it. I use this quite a lot for breakfast on the trail. It's awesome, it's flavorful, and it's also really easy to make. The shopping list for today is 1 cup of diced white onion, 1 cup of diced bell pepper, 2 poblano peppers roughly chopped, 3 coarsely chopped jalapenos, and 1 32-ounce bag of hash browns. Spread your hash browns out on a fine mesh tray. Spread your onions out on a fruit roll tray in your dehydrator. Do the same with your bell peppers and your jalapeno and poblano peppers. And dehydrate at 135 degrees for 8 to 10 hours. And this is how everything looks once it's dehydrated. It really does reduce in size when you're doing just the bare ingredients like this. Mix all your ingredients together and put them in 4 separate bags. You probably want to put about a teaspoon of salt in this as well. This will last about 3 years vacuum packed. When you rehydrate, put about 1.5 inches of water over your meal and let it sit for about 15 minutes. Once your water comes to a boil, give everything a good stir and let it boil for about 2 or 3 minutes. Then put your pot in a cozy and let it sit for about 15 to 20 minutes. I usually use this as a base and add a few other things, like some bacon bits and maybe a little bit of extra salt and some ketchup. That usually does it for me, and I really like it this way. Give everything a really good stir and then enjoy the meal. This is an awesome breakfast to have on the trail. Since it's a base for things, you can add a lot of stuff into this and make this really flexible for a breakfast. I like bacon bits and a lot of ketchup and some salt, and I'm really good for this on a breakfast. I eat this all the time. The next meal we're going to talk about is a whole grain cracked cereal. I'm not a big fan of oatmeal, so I typically don't eat it. So I like this whole grain cereal. Now this is my recipe, and my recipe may be different from something that you would like. So let's go into the recipe and we'll talk about how to get around some of the long cook times on this. I start with 1/3 cup of steel cut oats. Then I add about 1/8 cup of quinoa. And finally I add a couple of tablespoons of wheat bran. Okay, so this is my recipe. The only other thing I may add into this is maybe 2 or 3 tablespoons of millet. The big problem with doing whole grain cereals like this is that if you look at the cook time on them, most of the recipes or the grains say you have to boil them for about 20 minutes. And I think that's a terrible waste of fuel. So what I do is I actually put water on top of my cereal to where it's about 1 inch to 1.5 inches over it, and then I let it sit overnight. And what that does is it allows the grains to soak in some of the water, which is one of the big purposes of boiling it for so long. So you can cut your cook time down tremendously on this. And the way you cook this is kind of like you've cooked everything else. Boil it, bring it to a boil on your stove, put it in your cozy and let it sit for 20 minutes. I like to carry a little bit of honey or some molasses and some butter powder for this one, and it comes out really creamy. It comes out very flavorful, and it's one of my most common things that I eat for breakfast on the trail. So there you have it. My breakfast needs are pretty simple. Some potatoes or some whole grain cereal and a big strong cup of coffee, and that usually suits me fine in the morning. If I can find recipes to convert for breakfast, I'll certainly do them and make shows on them and put them out on YouTube. You can find these recipes as well as others on the Hungry Hammock Hanger website. Your comments are always welcome. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you on the trail.